Rome, center court, match point. Andrei Rublev sends one last ball into the net, and Jannik Sinner doesn't even celebrate. He just exhales, like a man finishing a job he always knew he'd finish. And in that single quiet second, a record that had stood for 15 years stopped belonging to Novak Djokovic. 32 straight wins at the biggest tournaments outside the Grand Slams. Then 33, then 34. A number no human being in the history of professional tennis had ever reached. Not Federer, not Djokovic, and not the man whose own untouchable streak Sinner had quietly stepped over weeks earlier, Rafael Nadal. And the person who said it loudest wasn't a fan or a commentator. It was Boris Becker, six-time major champion. The coach who spent 3 years inside Djokovic's box, helping build the very machine that set the record Sinner just erased. He looked at this and effectively ran out of words, telling an Italian newspaper that what Sinner is doing isn't normal and that he doesn't think it's fair to compare him to anyone anymore. Sit with the weirdness of that for a second. The man who helped engineer the most successful career in tennis history just watched a 24-year-old surpass it and admitted he has no one left to measure him against. So how did we get here? How does a kid from a ski town in the Italian Alps walk past Nadal like a road sign, dismantle a Djokovic record that looked permanent, and leave Boris Becker grasping for comparisons that don't exist? Stick with me, because the number is just the surface. The reason behind it is a far better story, and it starts with a loss. Here's the thing nobody tells you about dominant streaks. They almost never begin with a win. They begin with a wound. January 2026, the Australian Open semi-final. Sinner, defending champion, chasing a third straight title in Melbourne, runs into Novak Djokovic and loses in 5 brutal sets, in a match that didn't end until the early hours of the morning. He didn't see it coming. And according to Becker, neither did anyone close to him. It got worse before it got better. Weeks later, Sinner lost again, knocked out of the Qatar Open by Jakub Mensik. 2 defeats in 2 months. For a player supposedly destined for greatness, it looked, for a moment, like the wheels were wobbling. They weren't. That was the fuse. From Indian Wells in March, the losing simply stopped. Indian Wells, a title he had never won in his career, he took it without dropping a set. Miami, again, not a set dropped. Back-to-back Masters titles, surrendering nothing. Something no man had ever done in the history of the format. The Sunshine Double, cleaner than anyone before him. And then he did the thing the whole sport swore he couldn't. He conquered clay, Monte Carlo, the surface built for grinders, the dirt where Nadal raised a cathedral, and Sinner beat Carlos Alcaraz in that final to reclaim the world #1 ranking on the same afternoon. Madrid fell next, and in Madrid, almost as a side note, he slid past Rafael Nadal's best Masters 1,000 streak of 23. Let that number breathe. 23 wasn't a fluke record. That was Nadal, on his surfaces, at full power, the most physically punishing competitor the game has ever produced. For over a decade, only 2 people had ever climbed higher, Federer and Djokovic. Sinner joined that list at 24 and refused to even acknowledge it. Asked about passing Nadal, he brushed it aside, said he can't put himself next to those names, that they're a different level, that he's only getting started. The more he wins, the more he insists it means nothing. That detachment is exactly why the streak kept breathing. Quick pause if you'd rather have the story underneath the scoreline than the same recycled highlights everyone else clips. That's what this channel is for. A subscribe genuinely helps. Then came Rome and history. Djokovic's record was 31 consecutive Masters 1,000 wins, set in 2011 during one of the greatest seasons the sport has ever witnessed. It had stood for 15 years, and in all that time, the only man to come within 7 wins of it was Djokovic himself. Sinner matched it in the 4th round. Then he beat Rublev 6-2, 6-4 for win 32, and the record was his. He didn't stop. He took the Rome title over Casper Ruud 6-4, 6-4. He completed the career Golden Masters, every Masters 1000 trophy that exists, a feat only Djokovic had ever achieved. He became the first Italian man to win Rome in 50 years. The Masters 1000 streak now sits at 34. And this is where Becker stopped measuring his words. Speaking to La Gazzetta dello Sport, he didn't hedge. "I'd say the current Sinner is the best we've seen so far." On the clay sweep, he reached for one word, historic, and explained that only Nadal had ever won 3 straight clay Masters, not Djokovic, not Federer, nobody. But his sharpest insight wasn't about a trophy, it was about that wound. Becker said Sinner was genuinely shaken by the Melbourne loss, that he wasn't expecting it, and then the line that reframes everything. He said Sinner walked into Indian Wells with a fist in his pocket, desperate to prove that what happened in Melbourne was an exception. A fist in his pocket. That's the whole streak in 5 words. The 34 wins, the Nadal record, the Djokovic record, the Golden Masters. Becker is telling you it was all powered by one defeat a 24-year-old simply refused to swallow. This wasn't built on confidence. It was built on a grudge. But here's where honesty matters, because a hype reel would stop now. One name is missing from this entire run. Carlos Alcaraz. In April, Alcaraz went down with tenosynovitis, a wrist injury severe enough that he withdrew from Roland Garros entirely, surrendering the title he'd won the last 2 years. Which means the back half of this streak, Madrid, Rome, and now Paris, unfolded without the one man alive who holds a winning record over Sinner. That matters, and the sport's own people say so. Writing in that same Gazzetta dello Sport, former Italian number 1 Paolo Bertolucci argued that nobody left in the draw can beat Sinner right now, and that the only player who could meet him as an equal is the one who isn't there. So yes, there's an asterisk. But here's the counterweight that keeps it standing. You can only beat who shows up. And what Sinner is doing on paper isn't merely good. This season, he's won close to 90% of every set he's played, a sharper figure than Djokovic managed in 2011 or 2015. 2 of the finest campaigns the sport has ever seen, and he's playing cleaner than both. Alcaraz's absence explains part of it. It does not explain all of it. Nothing fully does. That's the part that unsettles Becker. And now the chase reaches the one place it is never finished, Roland Garros. The career Grand Slam is on the table. Win here and Sinner becomes only the 10th man in history to win all 4 majors. The trophy that's eluded him. The court where Alcaraz broke his heart in last year's final. He is the overwhelming favorite. He is also walking straight into the weight of everything that number now carries. So let's end where it actually lands. A 24-year-old lost one match he wasn't supposed to lose and answered it with 34 straight wins, every Masters 1000 trophy in existence, and a record that outlived 15 years and 3 legends. He stepped over Nadal without blinking. He erased Djokovic on the watch of Djokovic's own coach, and that coach told the world he is out of comparisons. But the ghost in this whole story is the man who isn't on the court. So before this becomes a coronation, I want your honest read, not a vague, let me know below, but the actual debate. Here's what I'm asking. When you picture the all-time greats, the Federers, the Nadals, the Djokovics, does a streak built while the one man who beats him sat injured belong in that conversation yet? Or has Sinner already done enough against everyone they put in front of him that the asterisk is just noise from people who don't want to admit what they're watching? Don't hedge. Tell me the exact moment you'll be convinced Sinner is the undisputed best on earth. Is it this French Open title, beating a healthy Alcaraz head-to-head? Or are you already there? Give me your line in the comments and be specific, because I'm reading them and pinning the sharpest take from each camp. The people who say he's earned it against the people saying, "Wake me when Alcaraz is back." Make your case.